Y'all, I need to talk to you this morning about Japan. Because on Tuesday afternoon at 4:27 local time, a powerful earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on the southwestern island of Kyushu. And the picture that has been coming into focus over the past 36 hours is one of the most significant earthquake disasters to hit Japan since 2016. And it is still unfolding. The death toll has been rising. More than 200 aftershocks struck in the first 24 hours. The Japan Meteorological Agency is explicitly warning that strong aftershocks potentially at the highest level of Japan's seismic intensity scale, could continue for a full week, with the highest risk concentrated in the next 2 to 3 days. And there is a compounding factor in this disaster that I do not think is getting enough attention. The extreme summer heat that is hammering Kumamoto right now, combined with broken water pipes and 43 medical institutions operating without reliable electricity, is creating a secondary humanitarian crisis, layered on top of the earthquake disaster itself. Scientists are watching this event closely, emergency managers are watching this event closely, and I think you should too. Let me walk you through the complete picture. What happened? The real timeline. At 4:27 in the afternoon on Tuesday, July 28, 2026, an earthquake struck Kumamoto Prefecture on Kyushu Island in southern Japan. The Japan Meteorological Agency initially reported the magnitude as 7.1, and that is the magnitude that Japanese authorities have continued to use, which is also why the JMA formally named this event the 2026 Kumamoto earthquake. The United States Geological Survey later revised its estimate to magnitude 6.8 after completing their waveform analysis. The difference in the magnitudes between the JMA and USGS estimates reflects the different measurement methodologies used by the two agencies, and both readings indicate a powerful, destructive earthquake well into the range capable of causing widespread structural damage. The epicenter was located just east of Uto and south of Kumamoto City, in the central portion of Kumamoto Prefecture, a densely populated area that sits directly above the same fault system that devastated this region in 2016. The depth was approximately 6 miles below the surface. That shallow depth is the single most important factor in understanding why this earthquake produced such severe surface shaking across such a wide area. Shallow earthquakes transmit their energy to the surface far more efficiently than deeper events, and a shallow magnitude 7 earthquake in a densely populated prefecture is a disaster before the dust settles. The Japan Meteorological Agency's seismic intensity scale, the Shindo scale, runs from 0 to 7, with 7 representing the most violent ground motion a location can experience. The JMA confirmed that Shindo 7, the maximum intensity, was recorded in Uki City and Hikawa Town. Shindo 6+ was recorded across multiple municipalities in the Kumamoto region. Shindo 5- was felt across 5 additional prefectures: Miyazaki, Kagoshima, Nagasaki, Saga, and Fukuoka, meaning the shaking was felt strongly across essentially the entire southern third of Kyushu Island. This was not a localized earthquake. The felt area encompassed tens of millions of people across one of Japan's most densely settled regions. The USGS seismograph network confirmed a peak ground acceleration of 0.705 grams at the Mashiki station, and the significance of that number for anyone familiar with earthquake engineering is immediate. Ground accelerations above 0.2 grams are generally sufficient to cause significant damage to ordinary buildings. 0.705 grams represents extreme shaking capable of destroying unreinforced structures and severely damaging even well-engineered buildings that were not designed to the most current seismic standards. The peak ground velocity of 94 centimeters per second recorded at Yatsushiro tells the same story from a different instrument. These were not numbers at the edge of concerning. They were numbers deep in the range of catastrophic. The human toll. What we know, and what is still unfolding. Let me give you the most current picture of the human toll from this earthquake, while being honest that these numbers have been changing and that the full scope of the disaster is still being determined. As of Wednesday morning local time, Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae confirmed to NHK that 13 people had been found dead. By Thursday, July 30th, NHK reported the death toll had risen to 30 people. The Kyoto News Agency confirmed 14 deaths as of their most recent report. In the immediate aftermath of a major earthquake, casualty figures from different agencies often diverge because different counting methods, different reporting speeds from different municipalities, and the practical challenges of accessing damaged areas all produce different numbers simultaneously. What all of these numbers have in common is that they represent real people who were alive in Kumamoto on Tuesday afternoon and were not alive by Wednesday morning. The Aeon Mall Kashima, a major shopping center in Kashima, Kumamoto, was among the most devastating individual sites of the disaster. The earthquake struck on a Tuesday afternoon when the mall was occupied by shoppers and staff. A gas leak in the mall's aftermath triggered an explosion that caused a partial collapse of the second floor, trapping shoppers inside. Rescue operations at the mall were ongoing as of Wednesday morning. 2 women in their 20s died at the mall, according to local authorities and broadcasters. The Nikkei reported that many more people may have been trapped when the second floor collapsed. Rescue workers have been working through the debris, and the final accounting of who survived and who did not from that mall is still ongoing. Beyond the immediate fatalities, the injury picture tells its own story about the scale of the impact. The Kumamoto prefectural government reported dozens of injured across multiple severity categories, with some individuals still unclassified as of the most recent official tally. And there are communities within Kumamoto Prefecture that rescue teams have not yet been able to fully reach because 26 separate areas of the Minami-Kyushu Expressway have been closed due to earthquake damage, and roads throughout the prefecture have been disrupted by ground failure, landslides, and infrastructure collapse. What the JMA is warning: the aftershock picture. The Japan Meteorological Agency's specific warnings about the aftershock sequence from this earthquake are the most important piece of near-term information for the people of Kumamoto right now, and I want to make sure those warnings are clearly communicated. More than 200 aftershocks struck in the first 24 hours following the main shock. Of those aftershocks, the MLIT Infrastructure Ministry's fifth report confirmed that 48 reached Shindo 3 or greater on the JMA intensity scale, including 1 at Shindo 7, 3 at Shindo 5 lower, 11 at Shindo 4, and 33 at Shindo 3. A Shindo 7 aftershock in the immediate aftermath of a magnitude 7.1 main shock is itself a significant damaging earthquake that would be major news on any other day. The fact that it arrived as an aftershock barely hours after the main shock illustrates exactly why the JMA's warning about ongoing aftershock risk is so consequential for the communities trying to begin their recovery. The JMA put it in plain terms that I want to share with you directly. They stated that it is common for strong tremors with a seismic intensity of up to 7 to take place in the week following an earthquake, particularly during the first 2 to 3 days. They also specifically warned of an increased risk of landslides in the hardest hit areas, because the earthquake has destabilized slopes that were already under stress from summer rainfall, and every significant aftershock reloads the triggering potential for those slopes. Communities in the mountainous portions of Kumamoto Prefecture need to be treating the landslide risk as an active, ongoing hazard for the coming week, not a hazard that ended when the main shock stopped. A JMA official specifically noted during a press briefing, "As the place where the latest earthquake occurred is shallow, this shows that many earthquakes have occurred. That is an expert communicating the same point I made in the previous section about depth. The shallow fault system that produced the main shock is the same shallow fault system that is producing the aftershocks, and shallow fault systems are capable of generating repeated damaging events in close succession. The highest risk window the JMA has identified is the next 2 to 3 days." The infrastructure picture. What scientists and engineers are watching? Let me give you the specific infrastructure status that the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo documented in their formal natural disaster alert of July 29th, because it paints the clearest possible picture of what the earthquake has done to the physical and operational capacity of Kumamoto Prefecture. 43 medical institutions throughout Kumamoto Prefecture are experiencing some form of electricity, water, or gas service interruption. That number, 43, is not a peripheral concern. It is the core of what turns an earthquake disaster into a prolonged humanitarian crisis. Medical facilities that lack reliable electricity cannot operate critical care equipment. Medical facilities that lack water cannot maintain sanitation, sterilization, or patient care protocols. In the context of a disaster that has produced dozens of trauma patients and an unknown number of people who have not yet been reached by rescue teams, the operational degradation of 43 medical institutions across the prefecture is a cascading failure that compounds the immediate disaster with a secondary medical crisis. Cell service disruptions around Yatsushiro City have been confirmed, with only SoftBank reporting no service interruptions. Communication disruptions after a major earthquake are both a consequence of the disaster and an accelerant of it. Rescue teams cannot coordinate efficiently, survivors cannot call for help, families cannot determine whether their relatives are safe. The Shinkansen high-speed rail line between Kumamoto and Kagoshima was closed for the entirety of July the 29th to allow for damage assessment. 40 flights operated by ANA and Japan Airlines were suspended from Kumamoto Airport, though international flights to Taiwan continued operating. The Minami-Kyushu Expressway was closed at 26 separate locations. All post offices in Kumamoto Prefecture were closed on July 29th. The Self-Defense Forces response has been substantial. An initial deployment of approximately 3,600 personnel was announced immediately after the earthquake. By the morning press conference on July 29th, the defense minister confirmed this would be increased to approximately 4,600 personnel. That is the fourth largest single disaster SDF deployment in recent memory. And it reflects the government's recognition that the scale of the damage and the logistical challenges of the terrain require military support for civilian rescue and recovery operations. The compounding heat crisis, the factor nobody is talking about. Enough, y'all. Here's the piece of this disaster that I think is getting far too little attention in the international coverage, and it is the piece that Nippon.com's detailed reporting brought into the sharpest focus. The extreme summer heat that is currently affecting Kyushu Island, part of the same heat dome pattern that has been generating records across the globe this summer, is compounding the earthquake disaster in specific and immediately dangerous ways. When an earthquake fractures water pipes across a prefecture, the residents who depend on those pipes lose not just the ability to drink water and cook and bathe. They lose the ability to cool themselves by the most basic human mechanisms during a heat wave: drinking water, evaporative cooling, the cold compress that a dehydrating elderly person reaches for. When electricity is disrupted across those same 43 medical institutions and across thousands of homes and businesses, air conditioning fails. In summer heat, the failure of air conditioning for elderly earthquake survivors, for the injured, for the people sheltering in damaged structures or in emergency evacuation centers, that failure does not just produce discomfort. It produces heat exhaustion and heat stroke in a population that is already physically stressed by the earthquake's trauma. Nippon.com reported explicitly that concerns are growing that earthquake-related casualty figures may rise further as dehydration and heat stroke take their toll on the earthquake-affected population. That is a direct statement from Japanese, reporting that the secondary humanitarian crisis from the intersection of earthquake damage and summer heat is real, it is being monitored, and the casualty numbers from this earthquake may not reflect the full human cost for days or even weeks after the main shock. The Japanese government needs, and has requested, international recognition of this compounding crisis because the relief response for a summer earthquake disaster requires resources and planning that differ significantly from a winter earthquake response. Water and cooling are not luxuries in a Kyushu July. They are survival requirements. The 2016 connection. What this fault system has done before. Y'all, I cannot tell this story honestly without returning to the 2016 context, because the Futagawa-Hinagu fault zone that runs through Kumamoto Prefecture is the geological structure that connects Tuesday's earthquake to the most devastating seismic event in Kumamoto's recent history. In April 2016, the same general fault system produced a sequence of two major earthquakes. A magnitude 6.5 on April 14th, followed 2 days later by a magnitude 7.3 on April 16th. The 2016 sequence killed 73 people, injured more than 1,000, and destroyed tens of thousands of structures across the region. The community of Mashiki, the same Mashiki where Tuesday's earthquake recorded a peak ground acceleration of 0.705 grams, was among the most severely damaged communities in 2016, and has been in active rebuilding for the past decade. The geological message of Tuesday's earthquake is the same message that 2016 delivered, and that I want to state as clearly as I can: the fault system under Kumamoto is not finished. Major fault systems do not exhaust themselves with any single earthquake sequence. The tectonic stress that drives the Philippine sea plate's subduction beneath Kyushu continues regardless of what happened on the surface in 2016 or on Tuesday. The ongoing aftershock sequence, 200 earthquakes in 24 hours, with the JMA warning of continued strong aftershocks for a full week, is the current expression of a fault system that is actively redistributing stress from the main shock rupture. The community of Kumamoto, which has demonstrated extraordinary resilience in rebuilding from 2016, now faces the task of beginning that rebuilding again under the same summer heat, with the same aftershock uncertainty, but with the additional knowledge and experience of having done it before. Y'all, the 2026 Kumamoto earthquake is a major seismic disaster affecting one of Japan's most populous southern prefectures. A magnitude 7.1 earthquake struck at 4:27 in the afternoon on July 28th, producing Shindo 7 intensity in Uki City and Hikawa Town. At least 13 to 30 people are confirmed dead as of the most recent reporting, with the toll still being determined. 200 plus aftershocks struck in the first 24 hours. 43 medical institutions are operating without reliable utilities. 4,600 self-defense forces personnel are deployed. The JMA warns of strong aftershocks for a full week. An extreme summer heat is compounding the humanitarian crisis in ways that could add to the casualty count for days after the main shock. Scientists at the Japan Meteorological Agency, the USGS, and research institutions across the global seismological community are watching this earthquake sequence closely, monitoring the aftershock pattern, analyzing what it reveals about the fault system's current stress state, and assessing whether the main shock has increased or decreased the probability of additional large events in the coming days. Please keep the people of Kumamoto in your awareness. Share this video with everyone who follows global Earth science and with anyone who has family or connections in Japan. Subscribe and ring that notification bell for continuing updates. And as always, stay safe out there. I love y'all.